Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today, we're swinging into Mythwind. I have a prototype copy in front of me, and I am aware that there are something like 14 or 15,000 people currently on the Notify Me button over on Kickstarter. Over the past months, I have seen targeted marketing for Mythwind all over my Facebook page, and honestly, I didn't really know a lot about what the game was until I had the prototype here in front of me, and I got a chance to explore it for myself. I'd heard a lot of keywords, read that it was comparable to things like Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley, two games that I grew up and absolutely adore playing, and so I wanted to cover it. So I reached out to the publisher, got a prototype copy, and I am, sitting here now, going to do my best to let you know about my experience and to go through everything you need to know about Mythwind before the campaign launches. Now, one important thing is, I think this is going to be one of those games that is a love it or hate it. And so I'm bringing back one of our older formats that we actually need to get back into circulation a lot more often. The Right For You, Wrong For You series, where I analyze a game on 7 core factors that I think about when trying to decide if I'm going to add it to my collection. Those factors are going to be an overview of the game, the theme, accessibility, gameplay, modes of play, innovation, and finally price. Now, do keep in mind, I'm working with a prototype. I don't have near the complete game in front of me. There are many more characters and modules and story elements and hours of progression that I just haven't had the chance to see. So all I can talk about is what I've been able to see. And when it gets to that final note down there at the bottom, I am filming and recording this before the Kickstarter page is live, so I won't have information on the price. I can talk about my sense or evaluation, but I won't be able to give you a fair judgment call on that. Outside of that, everything else, let's go ahead and start diving in. So, we'll start at overview. Mythwind is a fascinating game. It's a game that is attempting to replicate the essence of Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley. Games where progression is, the name of the game. Building up your resources, developing your skill and your tools and your items, purchasing a brand new location in town, and going on some exploration and adventures with bits and pieces of narrative strewn in between, but never really being the focus. Mythwind advertises itself as a game that really doesn't have an ending, something that you can continue honing and progressing from point A to point B, all the way down to point Z, and then back around the corner. This game is focused as a solo or cooperative puzzle, although I think solo is the main and core experience. You're going to be taking the roles. Here in front of me I have a farmer and a crafter. The farmer is going to be doing his best to take actions on the board that allow him to plant crops over here in his tableau, water, turn, and harvest those crops. You'll gain points or resources, money from those crops, and then you'll be able to use that to purchase new skills, new abilities, and new buildings in town. The crafter is going to be doing a very similar thing, adding tokens to a bag which she will draw out whenever she goes through her crafting system, placing them in a hierarchy and slowly progressing those items until they're complete. At the point where your items are complete and a certain amount of time has passed, you'll trade those items in for coin. Having a little bit of a marketplace over here. The better you get at crafting certain items, the more money you'll receive, and then you'll do the same thing. You'll return to town, purchasing a building, going on quests or adventures, and coming back to continue your crafting enterprise. Mythwind is an open-ended cooperative game where you're not really warring against anything in particular. You see, you're just trying to build a settlement or a town. You've arrived in this plot of land, and with the help of some very mythical forest creatures, you're doing your best to discover what lies around you. To build buildings like a lumberyard, which gives you an additional action that you could take to utilize your skill sets and solve whatever puzzle it is that you're presented with. Like I said, with the farmer or the crafter or any of the other characters that you could play with. Each will have their own asymmetric style puzzle, very similar to Merchant's Cove, if you remember how that game operated. Now, taking a step back, that's going to be an overview of the game, but let me go over what we have here. I have 2 different character journals for each one of our player characters, along with the rulebook. These walk you through the initial tutorials, which you'll probably see if you see any people's gameplays. We have the main board, which is where you develop your settlement and city. We have weather cards, which are going to control kind of the sequence of events and let you know if special things happen based on how the weather has been. You have a crafting location where you slowly upgrade your tools, resources that the settlement uses together, dice as well that the settlement can hire and use together. They represent spirits and workers that can aid you in your actions. And then you have your own personal character player boards and a stack of tiles and cards, from events that start scaling and changing as the narrative progresses to adventure cards that might add more events into the deck or just send you on a goose chase. Literally, I'd assume somewhere in here there's probably a goose to chase. So that's an overview of Mythwind. If you're looking for an open-ended solo or cooperative puzzle that allows you to develop a city or a town, press certain buttons, pull certain levers, all of which lead to more buttons and levers to press, or at least becoming more efficient at those buttons and levers which you have pressed, Mythwind might be a game that you'll enjoy. Now let's get to theme. And the best way for me to do that is to go ahead and draw event card 1 here and just begin reading. Arrival. Your party has arrived in a clearing. The forest has thinned as you've gotten closer to the tower that you could see when first entering the valley. Between you and the tower, still a distance away, are some rundown foundations. A few walls still barely stand, but clearly a community used to exist here. Read event card 2. One of the sprites that guided you into the valley tugs your hand and points towards the forest as a large tree falls with a thud across the path you just traveled. It'll have to be dealt with. All players must go to the adventure action in town during the daytime phase, and so on and so forth. We'll pull up adventure over here, which allows us to decide how exactly we want to deal with that fallen log, and we'll continue cycling back to this deck here. A gathering is held to decide the town's first steps. The rain convinces everyone that a roof is needed to make future meetings more agreeable, and so on and so forth. These are going to be the tutorial cards. You've arrived in this settlement. A large tree falls behind you, and the world of Mythwind opens up. And as far as I can tell, that's about all you know about the story that you're exploring so far. You have your character, and the tutorial leads you through some basic steps and setup guides, and introduces you a bit to the flavor of who you are, but overall, you have this essence of the unknown. You're searching through the event deck and going on adventures to try to figure out more about what you discovered. For instance, in our exploration here in the tutorial, we hunted the trail of a large beast that was looming on the side of the plain in the forest, and eventually stumbled across a Bigfoot-like creature who skirted off into the woods, leaving us a resource to use, and that's as far as we got. We're not sure what carries on beyond that. As far as I can tell, Mythwind is going to be a bunch of those open narratives, little pieces that string together, that tell a similar story to some of those classics, right? In Harvest Moon, the journey of a cow is as important as the relationship you're forming, or the sprites that need you to help fix the tomato plant and then slowly return the orchard or the tree back to life. It's all ambient and floating, but still interesting and worth diving into, and when presented with a puzzle or a narrative that you can follow, you can attach your own bits and pieces to it. So, if you're interested in Mythwind for the narrative specifically, I'll say this. I think there are puzzle points to press on. I think there's going to be stories to follow and things to discover, and you might find yourself invested in some of those narrative pathways. But right now with the prototype, I'm given the case of, well, Harvest Moon, right? Nothing feels really threatening or overly engaging, but a lot of it feels unknown and interesting, like there's a lot of premise and promise here for you to engage with. After that, let's swing into accessibility. Mythwind is not an overly complicated game, and in fact, the tutorial actually does an excellent job of walking you through how we use both of these characters. You start playing the game almost immediately, a few pages into the rulebook, and despite a few wording missteps and things that we had to figure out due to it being a prototype, we were able to get up and running very, very quickly. I think this is going to be primarily a solo or two-player game, and I think it's going to be one that is very easy to get back to the table. The board, being inlaid, allows you to save everything. The tokens and cards will stack nicely back into the box once it's finished, and everything on your board here is sort of designed to stay exactly where it is, with nice 3D printed inserts and nice modular terrain system that kind of stack down and lock into place. It's not a very complicated or hard game either. I could easily see playing this with a younger child or a group of family members who aren't into heavy board games. It's an ambient experience. Here with a farmer, you're primarily just placing tiles into your farm, flipping them and selling them for money and resource, but you never really run the risk of not utilizing the vegetables or crops that you've planted. It's just a matter of being more efficient with how you place your tiles down when you trade them in for resources and how quickly you progress the story. Over here with the crafter, the same deal arises. If you craft an item that you're not very skilled at, you just might not earn as much money, and it partially comes down to the gamble of what you've placed into and are pulling out of the bag. But really, the puzzle here is just a matter of time. What you've started building and crafting will eventually come back around, and you'll get better at doing that. And as the game progresses and you unlock various skills, you'll become more efficient and be able to do those actions more and more often, allowing you to collect more resource and kind of spur the game along. The biggest strike against accessibility, I would say, would just be the nature of the game. It is a long, sort of progression-based game where you start off and you feel like you're not as powerful as you will be in late game. That's necessary for your abilities to have merit or the buildings that you build to have value for you to do them, but it takes a little while to unlock and access some of those extra or better mechanics. And so when you first start, you'll find the tutorial walks you through very stably and consistently, but it's not until a couple hours into the game that you really feel like you're growing as a character, and you start identifying the areas within which you want to start bettering, right? So it's a very accessible game. It's light, easy to play, and easy to pick up and learn. But the strike against it that might make it not right for you is just going to be the nature of the length of play. This game is all about the experience, about sitting down and enjoying a story that's being told, and you have to be willing to invest yourself in that and be there for the long run. There's no strong end date here, so you can play as much or as little as you want, and really what you bring to the table is going to be what you find when you dive into Mythwind. So if you're looking for a game that's easy to table, this one, it might still be right for you. From here, let's swing into gameplay, and specifically the things that I think you'll like and that I think you might not like, the things that might make it right for you or wrong for you. As far as gameplay goes, the first high note is just going to be how accessible this game is. It really does what it's trying to do when it comes to kind of watering crops or feeding your animals and livestock, taking the time out of your day to hammer a shoe or lace some boot leather. You're just doing that. Now, that's both a positive and a negative. There isn't a heavy puzzle that you're trying to solve. Instead, you're trying to get better at the tasks that you're already decent at. I'm not trying to fight against warring dwarves who are ruining my farm. I'm not going to battle with smoking terraces, and the buildings that I've built in the settlement aren't being destroyed through sheer matter of time, wind, rain, rust, or any other dangerous element. Instead, I might lose some resource, I might stumble across something that was unexpected, it might take me a little bit longer to get to where I want to go, but I'm always sort of on that path. And here, with your characters, that's the same thing's true. In the first round of the game, it may take you 5 or 6 turns in order to plant, reap, and harvest, whereas later turns, you'll be able to do all those actions in a single swing or within a turn or two, depending on what dice you've used and where you decide to take your worker action. So it's both a high and a low. For me, I wish there was more to puzzle with here with each one of these boards. I found that, kind of like Merchant's Cove, there wasn't enough for me to sink my teeth into, and they didn't interact with each other as much as I would have liked for a cooperative experience. That being said, if you enjoy sitting back and kicking your legs up and playing through kind of the rounds of the game, there really is a little bit of an adventure here to find. Another high is I really have found a lot of the writing very charming. The game is warm and welcoming, it is aggressively peaceful and cute, and as I've journeyed through the adventure deck and the events here in the game, I have found a lot of cute little moments, things that make me smile, and little question marks that I want to continue pressing or exploring. That's probably the biggest draw for me at the moment. The story and the adventure and where that can go. Outside of that, the artwork is absolutely gorgeous, and of course, it doesn't hurt that this prototype copy came with painted miniatures. The models are exquisite, and if you're a painter, I think you're really going to enjoy this new theme that you'll be able to explore and spend some time with. So, if you're looking for a game that has beautiful artwork and really great writing, but maybe isn't as heavy on the strategic or mechanical elements, this one might be right for you. With that, let's go ahead and swing into modes of play. Modes of play is going to talk about the variations and the various ways you can experience this game, and for me, right now, I see two of them. First off, you could play solo or cooperative. I already said I think this is primarily going to be a solo experience, and with that in mind, each character, your crafter, your farmer, and whatever else they give you, will have their own narrative twists, their own route, their own adventure to explore, and if you're bringing something to the table while you're playing them, if you're invested in perfecting the farmer and building a village that fits his every need, and same thing with the crafter and what she is working on, well, this game will present a variety of ways for you to re-explore and re-experience the same puzzle. And that's great, but I don't know of any other really mechanics or ways to play. This is exactly what it claims to be, an open-ended exploration game. If you're looking at this and thinking about a cooperative head-to-head or strategic dueling game or a tabletop skirmish game that plays 4 to 16 players, it's not that. Mythwind is really going to focus in on that solo or low player count experience paired with variations in the type of characters that you want to play as. So if you enjoy playing solo games or you want to dive into a cooperative puzzle that allows you to re-explore different narrative characters, Mythwind might be right for you. From there, let's swing into innovation, which is always an interesting conversation because I haven't played everything and I don't know everything. But I do think Mythwind is doing its best to be innovative in this space. I haven't heard of and don't have another game to compare to it. It really is an open-ended game, which makes it hard for me to judge. Like I said at the very beginning of this video, I think this is going to be one of these games that a group of people love, and a group of people absolutely hate. And I don't know if there's a lot of room for middle ground. You see, Mythwind is a peaceful experience. It's a tabletop puzzle. It is a narrative adventure. It's something that unveils itself over the course of time, and it probably is a bit innovative in what it's trying to accomplish and do. The question really boils down to, does Mythwind do it? And is Mythwind, when it comes to the final production stage, going to be able to execute on everything that it's promising? This cascading, open-world, never-ending adventure with enough room for you to scale and build and grow, and enough of a puzzle for you to really sink your teeth in and feel like you've improved as a farmer. I know for myself, when I play Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon, the two things that I'm looking for in those games are things that I can check off, adventures, narratives, puzzles, things that make me feel like I've accomplished something, and, of course, the escalation, the ownership, the feeling that I've done something that has impacted the world around me. Growing a whole bushel of turnips, or rescuing a sprite from a fallen log, diving down into the caves and getting to the very bottom where I've upgraded my mine pickaxe as far as it can go and battled my way to those gems. Question is, can Mythwind do that? And I don't know. I really don't. I've never seen another game attempt something like this. A cooperative adventure without an antagonist, without an end condition, without something that can defeat you along the way. I think there's a lot of things I'd still like to see, a lot of things that I think could improve my experience for myself personally. I want each one of our characters to be a little bit more crunchy. I want a puzzle to fight against. I want an end game condition that doesn't have to be antagonistic, but requires me to really maximize and utilize the Euro elements of this game in a way that makes the puzzle captivating and puts me at risk of failing if I don't do it. I want to watch as my town develops, and as the artwork and buildings scale, I want to feel like I've become really powerful. Not just a little bit powerful over the course of time, but that the actions I've taken really mattered to the environment here. And right now in the prototype, there's just not enough for me to see whether or not it's going to be able to do that in the final production copy. I have to say, the events and adventures are charming and engaging. I kept going back to them as things that I wanted to re-explore. The artwork's lovely, and the characters are interesting. But their puzzles didn't engage me as long as something like Harvest Moon does. There wasn't that sense of escalation that I'm looking for. And so I'm going to be paying attention to the campaign and looking for a few things specifically. I want to see how the game progresses. I want to see what the other characters' mechanics are, and I want a better understanding of what the long-term pattern of this puzzle is going to be. Where do my boards change? When do things shift in a way that makes me continue wanting to play for the 20 or 30 hours that the solo campaign is promising? So, there we have it. I think Mythwind is trying to be innovative. Whether or not it accomplishes that is going to be a question for the final production. And now finally, price point. I don't have any information about this, sadly, to share with you. There's things that I'd look for and things that I think are of value, and the production quality here in these versions, in these prototypes, is really excellent. I have to say, I absolutely adore the miniatures that they sent around, and I want more of them. I've seen other reviewers have different styles or different types of miniatures, all painted up in their own custom way, and part of me kind of wants to collect them all. I think if you're a minis painter, and they have an option for you to get all of these minis and just spend some time living with them, the amount of detailing and the amount of customization, the amount of character that is imbued in every single one of these, I think these are absolutely worth whatever reasonable price they present them as. As far as the price point, I'm not really sure what a fair price will be. It really is going to depend on the number of miniatures, the production quality, and what exactly they're promising in that core box. So you'll have to swing over to Kickstarter and let me know in the comments down below. Do you think it's reasonable? Are you looking for more? Or are they giving you one hell of a deal? Whatever the case, this is our Right For You, Wrong For You series, where I hope I did my best to overview and analyze all the highs and lows, the pinpoints of what Mythwind is and what it's offering to you and your gaming community. With that being said, whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing, get out and play some games, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.